Hello, everybody. This is Frank with Iron Age News. It's Monday, August 25th, and today we are going to venture into the high estrogen, dramatic, crazy as F world of the Brovet and the Brovet channel. A lot of these channels came out a while back. As you know, Black Rifle Coffee and all those guys were probably the pioneers, and they set an image that was supposed to be what every returning veteran looked like and acted like, and this, that, and the other thing, which then, of course, since they were sponsored pretty heavily by whoever they were, uh, was able to take over a lot of the mainstream ideas of what was going on with these guys, much to the chagrin of any number of veterans who did not want to go out and do the same things that these guys did. Now, as this occurred, they realized there was money in YouTube, and they all stopped selling CQB courses and rifle handling or pistol handling and decided to get into doing content creation, which for some of them has done very well. For others, it has not done so well. That has led to a lot of bickering, this, that, and the other thing in between them. There are different formats and things of that nature. I bring that up because of a specific case which has moved through the courts of YouTube. And I will, at this point, again, before one of you pulls up my military record, tell you that I have no military record, that I am not now or at any time been involved in the United States military's special operations forces, known and unknown, or the United States Army, or pick something else. And nothing with the United States and nothing with their military. So my dog in this fight is basically, I don't like to see people get dogpiled, railroaded, this and that and the other thing. But I also do not like when I go onto a site, and even when I talk to contractors, when I had to talk to contractors in the old days, people that use a lot of jargon, you know, a lot of alphabet shit that they use because it makes them feel superior to you. And you, of course, are superior to them. That's why they have to use it. But that's a story for another time and nothing to do with this. So it's come up. There's a guy named, it was originally started with, for this, I have to go over this just for the people who didn't know the name on the title. There was a guy named Tim Kennedy. He was a golden boy. He cage fighter, he was in the Green Berets, he was this, he was that, he was the other thing. Turned out he was a tragic liar about a lot of stuff, and he had been called out on it at the time when people were starting to realize that things like the Marcos Luttrell book, things like the Lone Sniper book, the guy who shot bin Laden, that this was all not true. In some way, shape, or form, not true. That's how it is. Doesn't make me any money, doesn't lose me any money, but that's what it's come down to. These were PR, effectively PR things on the Navy side, especially to keep the enlistment gears running. So there's young Tim coming out on the Army side for once, clean cut young man, and he is not telling the truth either. So that got into a bunch of these veteran shows, and they decided to make mincemeat out of Tim, and Tim wouldn't knuckle under. And then eventually they got him to sort of knuckle under a little bit. And the rest is history. It's a sad drama to watch. If anything, what it has done is probably turned a lot of guys away from joining any of those units because they all look like a bunch of snitches. I hate to say it. I know you're protecting your image, guys, but it's too much. Okay. It's too much. Too much too soon, too much whatever. It does look like people are clout chasing. It does look like it's about the money. And you'll say, hey, I did 20 years. I stormed the beaches of Normandy, and all I got was a great blue collar job for the rest of my life and a pension, which is fine. All right. So now that we've alienated most of the people, let's get into this story. So one of the problems that they had when they were trying to take down Tim Kennedy, which I think they've probably done by now, but Tim's made enough money It doesn't really matter. Tim was on the Sean Ryan show, if you know what the Sean Ryan show is. I don't know if he was on Joe Rogan because I don't follow these that much because I know they're really an op. And so anyway, those in that situation, this other fellow named John McPhee, they call him Shrek, the sheriff of Baghdad, played into the story because he had brought Tim into a combined unit of when they tell you, well, I'll put this in here because not everybody tells you this. You use the term special forces in the United States. If you use the term special forces in the United States, that is referring to a specific organization, the Green Berets. If you saw the Green Beret movie with John Wayne, that group, okay? They are the United States Special Forces. This is going to come up later. They have a tab or what we call a rocker or a tab that goes on here, and it'll say Special Forces. That means that you completed the training to be a Green Beret. If you go to another unit, you'll still have that or airborne or ranger or sapper or whatever. Miscongeniality. You will keep that on your shoulder regardless of what unit you were in at the time. Okay. So it's actually over here, but we're going to do it over here today. It's on the left. And where are we going with that? So anyway, he brings this Tim Kennedy guy over to do some work as a Green Beret, not as a member of John's organization, which is got many different names, but we'll say Delta Force. If you saw the Lee Marvin movie, it's not exactly like that, but maybe it is because it's a secret, right? So they had some combined operation. Who gives a fuck, right? And so they were trying to get him to come out and say, Tim sucks cocks and he's a liar and all this kind of stuff. And he just, I guess, didn't want to because he was making a play himself to get onto the Sean Ryan show and the Joe Rogan show because there he has a chance to shine, make the big money. So I only caught it because it was very like, guys, like, you got to see this because what happens is the Brovet shows and the other shows that are out there, Cypher and even Caspian, some of these other sites, and there's a couple of regular guys on Instagram, they're being fed information by other organizations. They aren't actually going out and developing intelligence. They are being fed intelligence, which means they are working for another organization. So it's called the self-licking ice cream cone. You can look it up. All right. So that's the only reason this even came across our out over our transom, as they say. I got the deal because I had taken a class from John McPhee down in Florida City on shooting a carbine. So I was doing a review for it. There's a review I did just under Iron Age, which is way, 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 way back in the thing on this. I did it because at that point, guys were starting to cash in a lot on these classes, and they weren't really doing a lot. Not everybody. Some of them weren't doing a lot, and John's was very good. And I wrote it the same way. So I had 6 or 8 hours with the guy. We did not go on any long walks. We did not trade locks of hair. We did none of those things, but we shot rifles for 6 or 8 hours. So that's the only impression I can give you is from that. During that time, he was a little whatever. But he did mention, back in the day, blah, 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 which comes up now as we're going to talk about this whole thing. So whatever went on with John not doing what they wanted him to do, they had already gone and pulled up all the fucking records on this guy, right? Which you can too. What I'm going to tell you is we're going to have a link to what I'm going to read because I'm going to read to you a prepared document that will give you an idea of what the story is really all about, regardless of what these guys on these different channels are trying to tell you. And this is important because if you recall, there was a case done, I won't mention his name, of a SEAL team commander, meaning he ran the squad, whatever you want to call him, head of the squad, where he had been lied upon by his own men and he was being tried for murder. I don't know if you remember that guy, he had a red beard, and not the one who killed bin Laden, another guy. And he had put a book out about how he was denied fair trial, blah, 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 blah. And he was getting crushed in the media as well. So I felt bad for that situation after seeing what it was. And I said, well, let's really look at this thing, see what we're talking about here. And who gives a fuck in the real world, right? And that'll be the big question here. Who gives a fuck? All right. So now they got to the point where they're on John. Okay, so they have these documentation. These groups operate autonomously online theoretically, but once one gets onto a topic, they all get on the topic. Most of them use the information supplied by the first guy, which is again self-licking ice cream. So if I make up a story or I embellish a story or I misstate a story, or maybe I really suck at doing research, but I got there first, then the other guys pick it up without doing any research themselves, knowing that there's probably nowhere to get sued for libel or slander or whatever, and they run with it. Okay. And the guys that want to get the clicks, which we don't get on, if you're watching this on YouTube, we do not get anything on here. We were deplatformed twice. This is the third time we get like 8 or 10, right? If there are other sites, we were better, but we're slow and we don't care. So then there's those guys who are, oh, did you hear that? I don't want to believe that. I don't want to believe that that's happening, but fuck him. It's clicks for me because I put his name in the title, in the topic. So it is what it is. It goes on. So there is one online right now. I'm not going to mention the fellow's name because kind of thirsty, but you'll find it if you look up John McPhee and like liar or expose or whatever, and they'll all show up. So I based it almost as a refutation of what went on there because the way it is presented to the average person, you and I that were not high speed, low drag operators running around in the bush chasing Charlie, eating rats, cold rats and rice meat, as Colonel Willard would tell you. You're not being given an accurate story. And when you say I'm giving you the story, you're not even giving it in a way that would be coherent to somebody who understood the military justice code of the United States Armed Services. So let's roll through a couple of these things. So if you see this video, whatever it is, I'll mention a little bit about it. So John's thing is he's a retired sergeant major from that unit. And then, he teaches classes, he does whatever. He goes and plays jujitsu, he goes and plays yoga. He's enjoying his best life, right? But his problem was he would not cross the line to fuck over this Tim Kennedy guy further because, to be honest, there was no more need to fuck him up. I don't know why he's not looking at charges because he's still in a National Guards unit where he's misrepresented his decorations and this, that, and the other thing. So what are you going to do, right? So the background on this, of course, is that he did not retire as a sergeant major or a command sergeant major because he was involved in judiciary proceedings. Among those is the fact that he had his special forces tab revoked. And that was in around 2009. I'm going from pictures of the documents on the one channel. The guy with the t-shirt on, the tank top, if you get the one with the tank top guy, he shows you documents. And that's what I was trying to figure out is the documents and the series of what went on. So I'm going to give you what we think went on, and I'm going to get, and also the high points of what they're trying to do. Okay. Now you see some of these guys and you're like, well, it doesn't need to be done. It does if you are your average viewership drops you in the double-digit thousands, whereas these kind of conversations get you in the hundreds of thousands. Okay. That's always a nice thing to have. I know that's not why they're doing it. They're not doing it for the money. They're doing it for the prestige. The idea that this guy has had his tab revoked, and here are the reasons why. It's funny because if the idea is he's making money based on being a Green Beret, Never mentioned it when I was around for a day. He mentioned the other unit, and he mentioned the English or the Australians because he liked the Commonwealth guys, and his shooting style operates out of what we call a Rhodesian ready position, right? Which would not be something you would talk about in Fort Bragg. But either way, they bring up a couple different things, and we're getting into it too much right now. But I was just embarrassed for some of these other guys. The one guy who used to do the Marine reaction thing, he's actually more guilty by what he says in 8 minutes than the other guys are because he doesn't have the personal interest to look up any of the information on what this is, right? Well, I like that guy, but he seems to be a cocksucker. Yeah, right? Based on what? And you'll also see on these type of videos the fact they're like, I have all this other information. I'm like, Adam Schiff, he's back, right? I have all these pages and pages of information that make this guy look like a real motherfucker so that you too can hate him like we do. I looked on this is the best thing because when they did this before and I wrote something on this guy's site, said, yo, man, what's the story? But he never mentions the special forces. He mentioned special operations. They show a video clip on the one with the tank top on where he's got Sean Ryan and he even says special operations sergeant major. He loses the sergeant major job for whatever the fuck we'll go into, but he always goes as special operations. When he's talked on video, he always says, I liked my time in the Rangers. Special Forces was kind of eh. So he's not out there pushing the Green Berets at all. Not at all. Right? But you had the revocation because, and we'll explain why the revocation occurred, and it makes sense because of what had to be done. So that was a question. There's a question about him saying he jumped into Iraq, but I'm not going to go look for the video. I know it exists because when I was taking the class, I looked up some of these older videos to see what the guy's personality was going to be like. Nothing worse than being in there for 8 hours and having that range master guy, Oh, where are you putting that fucking gun, right? Didn't have that problem with him. It was great. All right. He's not great before you say I'm a lover. He was a very good teacher. I don't know if that makes him a bad Green Beret or a bad person, but he was a good instructor. So they have this situation here where he was officially reprimanded. It looks like February 27th of 2009. He's out in 2011. Okay. So there's a timeline going on here. And they show various documents and they're like, and this document, which was the administrative reprimand, which is what he got. He got an administrative reprimand. We will explain what that is in a minute. And of course, it mentions the rules for courts martial 303, 2008, 2009. He was down for adultery, okay, with a married woman. That's what his big bust out of the Green Beret operation was. He had been assigned to a Green Beret unit, whoever they are, regiment, and was given because he was going from sergeant major. He was getting demoted from sergeant major to master sergeant. That was part of whatever happened to him in the commandos. All right. Commandos to Green Beret. He loses the one rank. He's there as a master sergeant, or it was occurring at the time. He is given, because he is the ranking most time in grade, probably they call it, the position of advisor for the J8 Directorate, which I'll explain in a little bit as well. It's a pretty important job to be given to him. And but he had the years. He had the years, he had the experience, they put him in there. So from 2008 to 2009, he carries on an adulterous affair with a married woman who also works in that office. Now, that is a big fucking problem because who else is she involved with, right? No, that never happens. Never happens. Okay. But who else is she involved with in an office or out of office? Who wanted to be involved with her in office, out of office? How did it come to light? Who cares? They will mention then at the bottom, there are other charges that go with the justification of the reprimand document. And in there was a DUI because DUIs are a killer. And they also have him down for a detainee abuse investigation, meaning it's ongoing with a parenthetical, no, a spaced S, meaning there are multiple, could be multiple. But this is also considered in this charge. Like these are things that are bearing on why we're giving this to you. So that's all going on there. They then read a document which is not attributed anywhere. You know, this was important to show you these documents because they had the seals, and it was signed by the admiral who's the head of JSOC. And it mentions, he's like, I'm mentioning Gomar for a reason. Yeah, it's a stupid reason because the admiral in charge of JSOC signs everything that's involved with that because that goes into a permanent file. You just don't drop a guy from a commando unit off the face of the earth without anything. Anybody who is in trouble at that level, the commanding officer is going to sign it, meaning the commanding officer, not like John down in HR. This is true. All right. I'm not saying any specific dynamics. This is from the Universal Code of Military Justice and the procedures that go into it. There are procedures in the military which are not the same as procedures that are in the United States Civil Code. I know I'm dragging on, but it has to be done. Okay, because these other guys don't do it. And once again, I'm not saying he's not guilty. I'm saying that this is being represented in a manner like there are another couple pages which are testimony. At first, I couldn't figure out who the fuck it was, but it's the girlfriend, and she's talking about him pulling a gun on her and this and that and the other thing. And also that she was involved with him while he was still going back and forth with the ex-wife. None of this has ever been heard in any military court in the United States. This is a scandal. I have never seen this. I have never seen this at McGuire Air Force Base in the trailer park associated with it. I've never seen this in Browns Mills. I've never seen this in Dover, Pope Air Force Base. Never. This has never occurred that a guy is cheating on his ex-wife with another girl who's also married. It's bad. I'm making light of it because it's that, you know, it came out like he was killing children, or you know, it was something really super out of control. He was giving up secrets. You know, he's just doing fucked up stuff that you expect in the military, and he's getting punished for it. It nowhere does it say he doesn't get punished. He loses the Special Forces tab because I'll explain. Basically, he's got too good of a record for you guys to totally kick him the fuck off the planet, right? Because who knows what he's going to say. Once he's out on the street, he could talk about all kinds of shit, and then somebody could go to jail, right? So, yeah, that's how it works. Ask the people about Phoenix from the old days. If you run into anybody who worked that or with MAG or any of those groups, you push guys too far, and they're going to write a book about it. And maybe 8 people read it, but the fact of the matter is now it's known, right? So there's a couple questions they have on that. I don't want to get, it was just so much discrepancy, you know, or misplacing things. What else? So anyway, she also mentions this thing about the detainee abuse, the girlfriend. So you got to start saying to yourself, what is this? What is this page from? Is this page from is this from the actual proceedings that come from the reprimand? It's not stated. It doesn't even state the reprimand document correctly. Or why you know, the signature of a commanding officer is not important in this because he would sign everything that comes in on a case of this size. So are you saying that he never did anything? I don't know. There's a lot of things there that are not very clear, or if they are presented in a manner which makes, in my mind, the narrator look like kind of a douche. This is your job. When you see guys that are out there that are in the 30s to 50s at 100,000 viewers, it's pretty much their job. They're getting paid enough money that if they have to, you say, well, you get 20,000 viewers and you get $10 a month out of them, right? That's decent money. That's good money, right? I don't know where you're from. We do everything where we are for free. Not saying we wouldn't take the money, but we're not out there doing stuff. It's just that this stuff gets too egregious. This is no different than what you see being done to various Republican and sometimes Democrat politicians or people that work for the government, or even some asshole actor somewhere. It's just framing it in such a manner as to express additional guilt. That's what the signature question is. The fact that it's on these other things. What else do we have here for that? So yeah, this all fits in there around this 2009 date. It comes up later on, of course. We're going to go through this other part, which is the actual, my understanding, and I've broken down where we think the story really was, which is not how it's given here, because they're trying to keep it in the special forces thing, and it's not really that. Okay. Special forces was able to take it out on them because he was in special forces at the time, meaning Green Berets. Green Berets were able to take it out on him because they had him. All right. If the other group, the commando group, had wanted to take it out on him, they would have taken it out on him. There's probably documentation out there on that. Why don't you, and there's another guy who's from that unit, different time, different place. He'll probably have something like that. What I would worry about is if these guys are not filing FOIA requests, which you would have to do, which we'll talk about if you ask, I can give you the information. Who the fuck is in that office who's giving out the information? You're leaking. Where's Pete Hegseth? Why isn't Pete Hegseth kicking the shit out of Gladys in HR for turning this shit over to basically, at this point, a bunch of unqualified guys? None of them are in the JAG office. That's the Judge Adjutant General's office. None of them are that. They're special weapons guys on a good day. I don't think any of them were communications or medics, which is a little bit up the food chain from there. Shout out to the medics everywhere. You got to patch everybody up. So this is what the story is. And then, of course, they have a story at the end about him saying about this jump in Iraq, which, like I said, if I could find the video, if I cared that much more, if anybody gives me any shit, which we will find it at that point, he doesn't say it's a combat jump. There was an operation done at that time that he was in. They're trying to get you on when he was in theater or in the service versus that. There was an operation done around the right time. It was a non-combat operation. The thing that everyone got upset about is because he said he fell into a minefield. Were there minefields there? Did they clean up all the mines that fast after the war? Was that country completely put back together within the 3 months of the end of the war? Of the first Gulf War? I don't think so, right? I don't remember him saying anything about being a combat jump. He just said it was fucked up and the winds were high and he ended up in this minefield, and he had broken his leg. If you want to get on him, you'd say, roll your pant leg up and show me, because it's a compound fracture. That means that the bone is going to be sticking possibly out. Let me see the leg that you broke and I'll be fine, right? These things are not questioned. You're following the wrong lead. If this is what they're teaching these guys over at John Kennedy School of whatever the fuck they call it, special warfare, they're not teaching them very well. As you're saying this, and this comes off because they mentioned they got a copy of his record and everything else that shows he was a master sergeant. Nobody's saying he wasn't. He calls himself a sergeant major. He was demoted, right? Big deal. Does he get any extra money for being a sergeant major? Does anybody out there know what a sergeant major does? Not me. I don't know. Care less, right? Does he drive the truck? We don't know. All he has said in his cases is he's the money guy. He has to do the paperwork and he has to supply the money. It's an administrative position. It's no longer leading troops. That's why they put him over there. He was not allowed to be around the troops if he is torturing or fucking up the detainees in a war zone. Although we saw two or three expose books about how the SEALs were treating them. And there were some other things that have been said at a past interview, which I would not even bother to go because these guys are too lazy to look up anything. And fuck them. So basically, you're upset that he didn't have the combat jump, which he never says he has. He does have a Bronze Star with a V for Valor. He has three other Bronze Stars, which are not. The Bronze Star is kind of one of those, it means like perfect attendance kind of thing. Our governor, Ron DeSantis, has a Bronze Star without a V. The V is the deal. And he's got all kinds of other shit, blah, 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 air medal, you know, a lot of things. You can find them because they flash it up on the screen for a minute. And then there you go. So that is kind of the overview. Now let's get you right through. If you're still awake, here's what we're going to talk about. Here's what really happens. This is a hypothetical because we don't know the whole case because nobody has actually put out the documents. And here's the good, you guys are a bunch of fucking idiots, even though I'm sure you're nice people in the real world. They're like, well, my answer is, what is your goal with all this? Okay, what are you trying to get them to say? Are you trying to get them to eat dirt? Are you trying to get them to walk naked through King's Landing and they're going to throw shit at him? What are you trying to get? He does not push your brand enough for you to be this upset about it. Okay? It doesn't. But then you say you have 200 more pages of documents. Don't let me make a document dump. Well, I'll tell you what, you simple fucks. If this was a regular case and it wasn't military stuff and it was me, I would have my lawyer on the phone with you. Show me all the documents. I'll make a whatever of it. I'll tell you what I've done, what I haven't done. Was it germane to what I was doing as in a job? No, right? Let's see these other pages. There's 300 pages of these. You know what? If you have the money, I think it costs maybe $100. I'll say $100 to put together a Wix page or anything. You could use Facebook. It's free, right? Put all 300 of these documents on there. Put them all on. But see what happens when you do that, you can't charge money. Or if you did, you should charge money. And people say, there you are, you're just doing it to make money. If I can put it on my video, I get likes. Likes theoretically equal money. That's the problem with what you're doing. Once again, I got no malice. I understand you guys have to win at all costs. I get it. I read the book. All right. Free Pinelands. So let's just go through this real quick and it'll be so much better for you in the future when you see these things. All right. And give me a second because my long-windedness has taken this thing out of sync. This document that I'm going to read through to you now is also available at www.southflorida.com, and it'll be under its own little section. And it is basically in a style that hopefully you can understand. I didn't want to get too in the weeds with terminology, but you have to go with what's going on. Now, you've got the backstory, or you can go watch somebody's videos. Go watch somebody's videos. They probably all have failed marriages or something they got to pay for, right? Got to buy an F-250. And that's the other thing. Guys that they like out there don't get this treatment. There was a young fella, Korean kid from the Green Berets, who's down for 2 cases of domestic abuse, civilian side. Nobody says boo about him because they all liked him. So his likability allow you to get involved in that stuff? I don't know, right? Obviously, I'm making a lot of friends by doing this thing, but you know what? You get tired of the bullshit on both sides. So what we're going to do here is we're going to examine a disciplinary trajectory of a decorated senior enlisted soldier in an elite U.S. Army unit. This is homogenous. You can go on to you can get military law through GPT as well. You can hypothesize what you want. This is our hypothesis. This is what we're running with. If you don't like it, go make your own. Okay. The soldier's career was derailed by allegations of detainee abuse, later compounded by misconduct while serving in the Joint Special Operations Command, or JSOC. The case illustrates how the Uniform Code of Military Justice and related administrative mechanisms intersect, and how considerations of combat record, command discretion, and institutional reputation can temper the severity of punishment. Okay, an elite force assignment at an E9 or a sergeant major. This is just for you as we go through background and hypothesis. The soldier was initially serving in a prestigious special operations billet, having risen to the rank of sergeant major E9. Detainee abuse allegations. The soldier became implicated in detainee abuse investigations. UCMJ articles implicated. Now, this doesn't mean that this is what happened, but this is what would have been implicated. Article 93, cruelty and maltreatment. Article 92, failure to obey a lawful general regulation. Article 134, conduct prejudicial to good order and discipline. The outcome could have been, instead of prosecution at court-martial, the case was handled administratively, resulting in reassignment to the JSOC staff. Now, the JSOC assignment, which is Senior Enlisted J8 Directorate, okay? You're placed there as the senior enlisted supervisor for the J8 Directorate, which is resources and assessment. You're the money guy, as he's already said. This would have been considered what we would call a rehabilitative billet. High visibility, extremely administrative, minimal troop leadership. Subsequent this is when you start to fall apart. Subsequent misconduct at JSOC. Adultery. Article 134, which is affair with a married JSOC assigned service member. Even worse, probably, if he was counseling her. DUI, because these are right off of the sheet from the haters, which is Article 111, drunken or reckless operation of a vehicle. Alleged alcohol control related misconduct. The consequences: revocation of the Special Forces tab, issuance of an official reprimand, and ultimately reduction from E5 Sergeant Major to E8 Master Sergeant. That's on the way out the door. I think he may have already been losing that 9 to go to an 8 when he joined the Green Berets, and then he got put into an 8 when he left. That's where our gray area is. Was he moved over and demoted, or was he moved over to JSOC, then gets in trouble, then gets demoted? That's not up for me. That's for whoever else is going to go get the documentation, which I did not see that in their list of documents, which would have been favorable to their argument instead of showing you what he went out of the service as. You understand what I'm saying, right? You don't know what he was up until he's out. Doesn't tell you the highest rank he attained, tells you what he was when he went out. And they may have held that because it's the last 36 months, I think, of your pay is how they figure your retirement. Okay, so final infantry assignment. He's told to go wherever they will take him on the base. It's base specific, which once again is a question as to why. Okay, they're doing him a favor. To finish his career, the soldier was reassigned to an infantry unit. This served as what they call a soft landing. That's allowing completion of time and service requirements for retirement at a master sergeant's rank. Now, we're going to talk about applicable military justice framework. This is all going to be in the document that's on the other page. I know you guys don't like to go to other pages, but if you're going to argue this kind of shit, there's no reason to argue it. But if you are a fan of one guy and an enemy of the other guy, you want to drop bombs, this is what you want to ask. The applicable military justice framework, court-martial versus administrative action. The court-martial, which everybody's heard about because you can't handle the truth, the court-martial is judicial, carrying potential confinement, dismissal, and punitive discharge from the service. Administrative actions, which are letters of reprimand, tab revocation, relief from position, do not equate to criminal convictions, but are career enders. They can be career enders. I would say they are career enders. All right. Official reprimand, Article 15, administrative, may be punitive as part of the NJP, okay, non-judicial fucks the P punishment under Article 15 or administrative filed in the OMPF. We'll give you that answer in a second. In this case, the reprimand was career ending, but fell short of courts-martial. Now you have the reduction in grade. The soldiers must retire at the highest grade satisfactorily held. Because the soldier's service as sergeant major was deemed unsatisfactory, he retired as a master sergeant. He did not get to mix and match his money. He got master sergeant pay when he went out. I will guarantee you that was a story. Because that, if you see the final grade you have when you go out, that's how it does it. In the old days, in some cases, especially when there wasn't going to be money, like you just did your short time, 4 years or 6 years. When my father went out, he was breveted up a rank, I guess in case they were going to drag him back. Did not get any money for that, but was breveted up a rank. I didn't know that till I got the gravestone. So you learn a lot every day you're out there, right? Command authority in signing reprimands at JSOC level, okay? Because everyone's spying on everybody. It's standard that a general officer commander signs the reprimands for senior enlisted personnel. This is going back to when they said, oh, look, the admiral signed this. At JSOC, it is standard that a general officer commander signs reprimands for senior enlisted personnel. Contrary to sensationalizing reporting, this is not evidence of extraordinary importance, but rather routine procedure at that echelon. Come on, guys. Really? This is how it works. And you're putting it out there like he just shot Jesus in the face. It's not the case. That's strike 2 against you. Even if you're telling the truth, that's strike 2 against you, right? The counterbalancing factors that go into this kind of a case. While the soldier's misconduct, detainee abuse investigations, which obviously didn't go anywhere, adultery, which obviously went somewhere because there's pages of talk about it, and a DUI, which there's obviously substance abuse issues in there, could have triggered a court-martial and dismissal. The Army chose a path of administrative discipline and reassignment. Factors likely incident and influencing this judgment include decorated combat record. He had multiple deployments, valor awards weighed into the mitigation. Institutional reputation, avoiding the optics of publicly court-martialing a war hero, right? Love him or hate him, that's what counts as a war hero. Command discretion. Commanders exercise the latitude afforded under UCMJ to balance punishment with past service. That's how you do things. And the retirement eligibility, he was at what, 18 years, 17 years? They're going to fuck him before he gets out. That's how big business operates. That's not how the military operates. So with over 20 years of service, commanders often allow a quiet landing rather than stripping the benefits out of people. So a key point in the public narrative of this case was that the reprimand was signed personally by the commander of operations JSOC, and we just explained, while it's being presented as an extraordinary thing, is a standard practice, okay? That is being done to bring you into the story more. The second page of testimony, which was the girlfriend, we never get the story on her. If she was, and this is the bothersome part with that. So she's down there, she's saying, you know, he's doing this, he's pulled a gun on me for changing a radio station, which, you know, it's a good song. You're going to do what you're going to do. But it reads in a manner that would say, how come she's not in trouble? What trouble did she get into? It takes two to tango, right? And she told her husband, which means who was her husband and who did he tell? Once again, I am not up for people fucking my wife. So, no, what John did is not a good thing. All right. But it takes two to tango. Anybody would have known he is not on the way up and he's on the way out. So there was not a lot of, I can get you on a fast track to wherever. It's not like you're the commander of a ship and you're screwing an ensign who then turns around, and they used to get you for what the hell's the time? Lack of faith in your command ability. There's a term somewhere like that. And the Navy had gotten so crazy while they were woke that we almost didn't have a seventh fleet because everybody was getting taken out. So what you're seeing here, if nothing else, that you should learn from this, if you're still with me, you get a free t-shirt whenever we make them. This case illustrates what we call a dual nature of the military justice system. It is strict on paper. The UCMJ allows for harsh punishment. John should have been kicked out. John could have gotten jail, but he could have gotten kicked out. He could have had no benefits. He could have had nothing when he went out the door, like General Milley should have, right? What they're doing here, same thing. Why is General Milley getting away with treason? Because the only people that can judge him are other military people. But that's a different story for another time. So flexible in practice is what you're going to see, and which is why the military has always avoided being under civilian justice. The commanders are balancing law, discretion, and institutional image. The soldier avoided the harshest outcomes, which he did: court-martial, dismissal, loss of all benefits. But he still suffered the demotion from sergeant major to master sergeant, revocation of the special forces tab. He got an official reprimand. It's in his permanent record. They took away his security clearance at that point, and which I believe he went and worked for the Jordanians or somebody else after he got out, and they don't really seem to care much. The reason that you revoke security clearance on certain people, especially like Bolton and Milley and all them, is because that's how they make their money later on. They did that with, or somehow they're doing that with, we were just talking to Larry Vickers. Larry Vickers is another guy from that same unit, and he got in some kind of trouble about machine guns, and he was doing a lot of business with HK. In fact, Larry is probably the godfather of a lot of these tactical weapons you see today. And they didn't descend upon him as bad as they descended upon John. Same unit, different group. These guys are doing what they're doing for whatever reason they're doing, but there's enough there normally to embarrass this John McPhee. You can embarrass him just with what you had. All right. But it only works if he really is that interested in the Green Beret thing. You're transferring your interest in the Green Beret and what it means to you to John, and John doesn't seem that interested in it. So you've lost your ability. Your superpowers are gone, basically. Okay. What you're doing is now, what's your public perception? This is what they should have been teaching you over there at John F. Kennedy, was how do I get the natives behind me and against the entrenched enemy of myself? This is not the way to do it. This is kind of stupid. This shows you guys that possibly the training isn't where it would have been in the old days, because maybe they would have just let it go. Maybe somebody would have walked up and kicked him in the balls at some special forces event, but he doesn't go to them, so that wouldn't happen, which is a different story than what you had over in the SEAL teams with Jesse Ventura and Kyle, what's his name, right? Different dynamic entirely. So if you're saying we're doing this on behalf of the commando unit, then that's a different story, because then they're getting back at him for doing to prisoners whatever he did or did not do to prisoners, because obviously he was never prosecuted for it. So that's about it. Sounds, I'm sorry it took so long, but it's just every time we do an article in general, we have to look at certain things. You have to say, I know that I can be sued. You know, am I going to get sued? Am I going to do this? Am I going to do that? I want to be able to say, as a, I would not consider myself a journalist. I'm a research person. I do research. We come up with whatever we do for different people. But I wouldn't have put this piece of shit document out the way it went out. And it just doesn't look good. And if he is stone guilty, you've actually given enough doubt in your methodology to make him look good. You know, you were dropping bombs on that Tim Kennedy douchebag, and his own command structure wouldn't even do anything about it. So that should have told you something then. So what, you're going to burn down the forest? Young guys are going to see this and be like, why the fuck do I want to be around these? Why do I want to risk my life around this shit? You know, they should go watch Vet TV. That guy, at least he's got it down. He's telling you what, you know, the average Marine infantry guys are up to, you know, and the whole don't leave your wife around your friend shit, that is well known. You know what I mean? You didn't have to spend another $500 billion building a JSOC facility to tell people that. But anyway, that's all I have on this. Is there any questions? We're not doing any follow-ups to this. I don't see a need unless somebody's stupid, in which case have at you, bitch. But anyone watching these things, you got to watch out today because everybody has 90% of it's about making money. You know, 90% of it's about making money. And they'll abandon whatever they have to do it, or they'll delude themselves into thinking that I'm doing it on behalf of certain things. Probably the best group I've ever met, not that you care, best group I ever met about this kind of activity, the French Foreign Legion, Le Légion Étrangère, the parachute regiment. Met a number of those guys. Never would have seen this kind of shit coming up out of it. Never, ever would have seen this kind of turning on your own brothers, you know. But that's them, that's you. So have a good day otherwise, and talk to you later on.